started thinking like the colonists to know the true Ali. Started dropping it. The problem is we started thinking like the colonists to know the true Ali. Started dropping.
Thank you for your information and education. Now, I want to talk about you personally. Tell us how you grew up, how you became involved, what caused you to be embracing the nation, the Moorish nation. What caused you to do that? What were your experiences growing up?
Excuse me, huh?
Can you walk up? Maybe if you want to walk up.
Oh,
No, he pick it up.
oh, what caused me? Oh, yes. All right. When I was young, when I was about 6.5 to 7 years old, I used to collect books all the time, and logically, as we always do when we're small, collect bugs. I'd have bugs and snakes and stuff in the room, and yeah. And my mom would tell me to clean up. But anyway, I used to, I had comic books, but I used to also buy educational books at like a secondhand store and stuff like that when I was young. When me and my brother used to go out, we used to go junking stuff and stuff like that and get finance and stuff and work and do stuff and we would go buy books. And my mother told me, to get all these books off the dresser, off the floor, and off the bed. And so when I was 7.5 years old, I built my first bookcase. And of course, by virtue, even though I lacked understanding because of my age, I had a lot of valuable books. And I gained a lot of information. As an example, I had a collection of Bibles that a few of them when King James was Prince James. And some of the earlier Bibles had human skin, which I was to find out later, that the leather covers were actually human skin. And also I had books that I collected from Kane Avenue, from this old book traders I used to go to. And it was from the Old Bible Tract Society, of which Charles Rutherford was one of the founders, which later became Jehovah's Witness. And a lot of those old books from the 1800s and earlier have a lot of world history and information in them that is not readily available in a lot of your heavily edited modern books. Logically, as I grew up and became active in different, like in church, mosque, and the different orders as we grow up in the communities that we're influenced by, you quickly discover that you're kind of like a rebel because you have a body of knowledge that you assume that is the standard, and then as soon as you start talking, you find out that you're the rebel, and you find yourself rejected. Well, over a period of years, that was a constant thing that I experienced, and it didn't take me long with my travels through the church. At about the age of 13, 14 and a half in that area, when, now my father was a barber, and we used to have Reverend Brown and a few people, and of course friends too, and my father's cousins, they used to come around the house sometimes to get their hair cut instead of going to the shop, and they would sit around talking, how people, they would talk about religion and the Bible, etc., and everybody gives their version, how they do, and everyone's fussing. And once in a while, my father would call me up to talk to Reverend Brown, although I was at that time around 13, and then he would be amazed at what I knew, but it wasn't that I sought knowledge or anything. It's just I read a lot because my father always read. We wouldn't, and by habit, because of the way we were raised, we wouldn't even go to the bathroom without a book. My father had a bookshelf in the bathroom, and so we wouldn't even go to the bathroom without a book. It was just like normal. And so by default, I learned a lot of things, particularly about world history, because I had a lot of older books. And I quickly began to recognize over periods of time that persons that I trusted in positions of authority, etc., were not necessarily in the business of telling all this truth that they claimed they were telling the people, because logically, when you would look into the background of the history of both the church, of religion, etc., you have a different background than persons who just adopt these things and accept their Now, one of the things that Reverend Brown had done, because children didn't like to go to church that much. They wanted to go play and stuff like that. And one of the things that was going on Second and Erie was that the children didn't want to come to the church, and the parents would come to church, do their thing. And Sunday school, where most of the children would go, like in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, was pretty much empty. But because I knew a lot of children in the neighborhood, Reverend Brown asked my father, could I open up Sunday school or start leading Sunday school for the children, thinking that it would inspire the children to come to Sunday school. And of course, as usual, when we started the Sunday school, some of the people I knew and some of the children I didn't know, but most of the children in the community I knew, whose parents were coming to that church, we began to, within a week or so, immediately double the numbers, and of course it expanded as it goes. Now, when I was younger, they used to have this like barrel type printer, whereas you would copy stuff, it was a copy machine, and it would do it in blue ink, and I would do some research on whatever the subject matter would be, and I would take it to school and have the teacher run copies off, and that's how I would run Sunday school. Particularly because I had a background into the Septuagint, which I had a few Septuagints. I had a Schofield Bible, and I had Prince James Bibles, and I had early King James Bibles. And of course, by virtue of that literature, and then of course some of the Bibles that were imported from Europe, etc., even transliterated Bibles, etc., I had Hebrew to English. Although I didn't understand all of it at that time, I did have some etymology relative to that. And so logically, I had a different view of things. I didn't take that emotional belief view on things because I had information. And so I would do my lessons and then run them off. And of course, the children were interested because it became interesting to them because it was information. Anyway, Sunday school became so big they had to get more chairs. And then after a while, Reverend Brown just shut it down. Why? Later, of course, we figure out why, but at the time I didn't understand. My mother cussed him out. And, because the deal of this, she felt that he was hurting my feelings, etc., because I was young. And we started having more people in the Sunday school than we had in the regular church. Even some of the adults started coming down there. Yeah. And of course, after that, I left, and it didn't matter to me because I was, they only asked me to go around it because my father never took us to church in that sense of word, even though we had some ministers in the family. And he never put us in what you call denomination. After that, my aunt and my cousinette and cousin Mark, they were Jehovah's Witness. And we started going out to Kingdom Hall with them on Westfield Avenue in East Camden, in Jersey. And logically, I already had a background because I knew about Rutherford and all them anyway. I knew the background when the Jehovah's Witness was the Bible Tract Society. Of course, it didn't take me long to recognize that these people, including the ministers, didn't know nothing about the Bible Tract Society. You see the point? So I ran that circle for a minute and left because I recognized it was suppressing. And I left there, and then I went into the Nation of Islam. At that time, I was around 19 years old. Within months, they made me assistant minister. And of course, the same routine. And it became apparent to me, really, during that time, that most of these people in positions of authority have no intentions of telling the people the truth. Because I started recognizing a common strain. And the common strain is, they're always telling people about love and gods and the devils and when God's going to kick the devil's butt and all this old stuff, be there, that type of thing. And it's always costly to the poor people, but when it comes to the fact of the real history of the development of religion in the Western Hemisphere and the world, everyone gets this persimmon type attitude, and they always get this attitude that the people aren't ready. Meanwhile, they're taking the people's finances and telling them they need to know about these gods, etc. And they always happen to be broke at the same time. And it didn't take me too long to Well, it did take me longer to consider it, yeah, about that, to be honest with you, because at that time I was around, I think, 20, 21. It came, how do you say, I came to the conclusion that these people have no good interest for the masses, that they're sucking them. Then, of course, by me also having etymology dictionaries, and I had a vast collection of all types of dictionaries. And I used to always read them, just like as you read my Bibles, I used to read them from the back to the front, then read them to the front to the back, as I have it, and I compare them, stuff like that, you know, not because I was really looking at it from a scholarly position. It was more or less by default because I like to do it. I wasn't trying to necessarily learn things in that sense, that because it might give that appearance. Although I do that now, that wasn't my motive. It was just because I like to read. I like to find out stuff. And I like to fix things, and so I buy books on science, carpentry, masonry, electric, and stuff like that. So when I was very young, I was pretty much technically up on most stuff anyway. But anyway, so I came in, I noticed that when we used to open up the meetings at the old temples that later became Muhammad's temples, except that became Muhammad's mosque. They was first called temples first. Then they became Muhammad's mosque. They would always mention Noble Drew Ali, but I always recognized that whenever I would ask any questions concerning Noble Drew Ali, everyone would get this like persimmon lip, you know, like discomfort. You know how you can tell when you ask questions and people don't want you to ask questions? They're not totally rude to you, but you can tell by their spirit that everybody gets uncomfortable. And logically, me being, you know, the rebel that I was anyway, because, you know, it's sort of like knowing things and people trying to tell you something. They're trying to tell you that red is green when you know they study colors. And they're trying to tell you that red is green, and then when you ask them to present proof for it, they want to get hostile, stuff like that. It doesn't take you long to recognize that most of these people in most of these orders are misrepresenting even what they're claiming, because they suspect that most people don't have a background in research or even know how to research. So logically, it became apparent to me that in most of these orders I didn't belong, even though I was young at the time. I didn't belong because I just wasn't dumb, and I wasn't a follower. They needed dumb people who they can take their lunch money, dumb people who they can get to pay them their mortgage payments and have them thinking they're giving it to Jesus, God, and Allah, and having people thinking that Jesus got a bank account at Chase Manhattan. You know, but of course, I was never, you know, that follower type, but I didn't look at myself necessarily that way. I think it was more or less by default, if you understand. And that, you know, when you studied something, somebody's trying to tell you it's not what it is, you know, after a while you start figuring out this person's not being honest or genuine. You know, because it's one thing when you assume something, it's another thing when you research something and you know better. And just because you're young and people, you know, disrespect you because of your age and then dismiss you, of course that makes it kind of worse. And then you got to get over that little crush that often occurs when we're growing up. And then, of course, as I got older, you know, I just...
The problem is we started thinking like the